Hey everyone, we have a new piece of news today. It looks like from the extremely reputable and important Johns Hopkins University, kind of on the vanguard of the latest psychedelic research in the 21st century. Looks like they produced a survey. They published a survey yesterday, and they're saying that psychedelics, which a lot of people that have used it already know, of course, but now we have scientific kind of backing, and we have the scientific operational approach to kind of credibility towards this notion that psychedelics may lessen the fear of death and dying, similar to feelings reported by those who've had near-death experiences. So let's dig in deeper into this. So in a survey of more than 3,000 adults, Johns Hopkins medicine researchers compared psychedelic experiences with near-death experiences that were not drug-related and found notable similarities in people's attitudes towards death. Survey participants in both groups reported having less fear of death and dying after their experience. They also reported that the experience had a lasting positive effect, providing personal meaning, spiritual significance, and psychological insight. Now, so they're comparing on one end, they're looking at people who have taken psychedelics. Now, this is not a clinical trial. This is not a supervised clinical trial with an MD or a PhD, MD researcher. This is simply a survey. So that's a different class of research, right? We have on one end a survey, and on one end we have an actual clinical trial. The FDA doesn't, they're not using surveys to approve drugs, but still, it's an interesting and useful survey. And coming from Johns Hopkins, the super reputable Johns Hopkins, who is reputable regardless of anything, and also who is the institution is incredibly reputable when it comes to a modern psychedelics related research. When it comes from Johns Hopkins, it's a little more reputable. You assume they have good practices in terms of their their statistical probabilistic approaches, their assumptions, and their operations with getting the survey, making sure that the conclusions that they're purporting are true are actually reasonably derived from the data. Like there's a tweet as well. Um, so Johns Hopkins medicine compared psychedelic experiences to near-death experiences and found notable similarities in changing attitudes about death and dying. So what an interesting perspective is it's just a little bit of a discussion here. When we say near-death experiences here, they're talking about near-death experiences that people have had, self-reported, and how they kind of felt with those experiences versus how they felt on psychedelics. So what it seems is that a near-death experience is kind of an unusual, altered experience. It's not your normal waking state of mind experience where you're drinking coffee in front of a computer rational, where like I can ask you how much money do you have in your checking account, what's on your to-do list, when's your next oil change for your car, things like that. That's one state of mind. When you're having the near-death experience, you're likely in a completely different state of mind, more similar to psilocybin. Um, I don't know how important are these surveys. They're kind of important. Each one lays a brick on top of the previous large amount of bricks that have already been laid. And so each one itself is not super important, but they build on top of each other. By the way, hopefully you like this content. I'm gonna do my best to provide, as just all the content, all the stuff, all the beautiful stuff on psychedelics from investing, and industry, business, kind of that type of perspective. So, do me a favor, if you like this content, please click the subscribe button. Please like this channel as well. Like the content, click the subscribe button. That really helps. And give me a comment. Give me a comment on what you wanna see, how I can improve. I'm sure I'm not the best speaker. I'm sure I'm not the best at this. I'm sure my format could be much better. So I'm very open to feedback. I want to serve the community very well here. I want to serve the community incredibly well, actually. I'm really excited to be doing this. And I think that this is something that I'm very well suited to do, given my background as somebody who has, degrees in econ and finance, but also who's been investing since they've been a kid in a bunch of companies that have done well over the last kind of couple of decades, and who's interested in seeing the next couple of decades do well for his portfolio as well. So when I'm thinking about that, psychedelics seem to be an interesting play for me personally, for my own personal financial portfolio and wealth building strategy. Now, of course, this is not financial advice. This is just entertainment. So probably you can quit here on the video. This is the gist of it. But if you want to dig in more, let me dig in a little bit more on this video, and let me read a little bit more for you about the study, and I'll provide a little bit more commentary. But you kind of got the gist of it. So what else are they saying? What else are they saying here? They're saying the results are consistent with several recent clinical trials showing that a single treatment with the psychedelic psilocybin produced sustained decreases in anxiety and depression among patients with a life-threatening cancer diagnosis. Yeah, this is the big Roland Griffiths study, where Roland Griffiths is just turning the whole thing upside down. He's basically saying, I'm not okay that this has been like sleeping for 50 years. It's time to wake up this whole industry, this whole sector, this whole approach towards healing and medicine. It's just time to wake it up again. So Roland Griffiths, we'll talk more about him in the future as well. So he's a researcher at Johns Hopkins. You can Google him. So Griffiths is his last name, first name Roland. And looks like those trials, yeah, were conducted in 2016. Michael Pollan mentions him in his book How to Change Your Mind as well. So he's well known. I think he had at least one TED Talk, possibly two TED Talks. Yeah, YouTube, a very interesting guy. Um, just a very calm man as well. Not somebody that's like overly excited about psychedelics. He's more excited about scientific breakthroughs and finding novel solutions for mental health problems, it seems. And just incidentally, psychedelics seems to be helping him. Not him, but seems to be helping with those things through their research. I guess he came upon that kind of because he had a meditation practice, but he's just interested in psychedelics because they can, just like all of us are interested in psychedelics because they can help, because they're helpful, right? It's a different type of drug. It's not the same drug as like marijuana or alcohol or even coffee, or even the other drugs that people could take. It's quite a different type of drug. It really does seem to be more in the realm of medicine and therapy and far less in the realm of recreational drugs. So that's how I view psychedelics personally. Again, not financial advice. Let's keep going here. So, quite a small trial. The largest of these trials that Griffiths conducted was a randomized trial of 51 patients. So these are all small trials. For a layperson like me, who's not a operational scientist, a trained scientist, who's actually performing research or reading or reviewing or doing anything related to research um, or creating studies, thinking about studies, or designing studies would be the right way to put it, would be basically, for me, 51 seems not like a lot, but in the scientific setting, in these kind of preclinical, pre-phase 3 trials, I guess, or these kind of more research-based trials, 51 is reasonable. Yeah, it's very interesting to see. Actually, I wanted to take a course on scientific experiments in the past. So for me, science and the act of doing science seems like a very, it seems like an operational technology almost, like a handed down operational technology where our ancestors, some not very long ago, they found out an approach to tease out insights from reality through a set of operations that are done. You have to follow these operations to be able to have confidence in the kind of the knowledge gained, right? To make sure it's not biased and that it's actually representative of the real world. So that's in one sense, that's how I view science. I see it as a very operational, messy thing as well, in addition to kind of the theoretical way most people see it. Actual science, when you're doing real science, it's a human, messy thing. You're designing an experiment, you're designing a process. There's people involved, there's biases involved. Very interesting. I wanted to take a course on that, but my path was more towards the finance path. So that's how, I'm quite a late person, that for now. Now let's learn more about the survey. Let's dig deeper into the survey here and see how many people were studied. Okay. For the present study, the researchers analyzed data gathered from 3,192 people who answered an online survey between December 15th and April 2018. So, okay, as we're going through, we could see I could criticize these studies, pretty strongly. I want to criticize all these studies. My general inclination is to kind of try to find the holes, but I'm going to try to avoid doing that. Obviously, on online research, there's a deep self-selection bias. It appears to me, a layperson, it appears that there will be a big self-selection bias in terms of who's going to be answering the online survey. Are people who had really bad experiences on psychedelics going to answer it? Are people who are not enthusiastic about psychedelics going to answer it? I don't know. So participants were divided into groups. 933 individuals had non-drug related near-death experiences. So about 1,000 had near-death experiences that were not drug related. Okay, while the rest had psychedelic experiences, which were prompted by either lysergic acid, by LSD, psilocybin, ayahuasca, so DMT, or DMT. Um, Basically, ayahuasca, I believe, is DMT. Uh, if I'm not totally off my rocker here, so uh, maybe a more pure form of DMT they're talking about. But so yeah, you have the main drugs: LSD, psilocybin, and ayahuasca, and these were the drugs that the participants did. So you don't have ketamine here, which I think ketamine is probably not a true psychedelic in the same sense. Although MDMA, although ecstasy is a potentially very useful drug, I would say it's also not the same. I would say it's also not the same as these other ones. Now, some people may disagree with that, and I really would like to know. Give me some feedback in the comments below. But do you think that's true? I think LSD, psilocybin, and DMT are a bucket of psychedelics, and you can't. They're different in a very real and important way. Personally, I feel than things like MDMA, which is also very potentially incredibly useful, potentially incredibly beneficial as medicine, and MDMA and ketamine, which I don't know. I don't know about ketamine too much, but um, I think MDMA is probably more useful than ketamine. But ketamine is the only one that's kind of allowed now. Ketamine is the only one that's FDA approved for psychedelic use. Now, of course, in the past, ketamine was approved for other medical uses, other related uses. I think more as an anesthetic, but today it's used also in small doses by companies like Field Trip. The Field Trip recently split into a Reunion Neuroscience and Field Trip Health and Wellness. I think that's what they're called now. But basically, Field Trip, that clinic, that's what they're doing. They're doing ketamine treatment. That's basically all they're allowed to do because MDMA is not approved yet, and neither are the main psychedelics. So that's kind of the gist of it. So let's break down the numbers here. So 933 were a non-drug related near death. 904 took LSD. 766 took psilocybin. 282 took ayahuasca, and 307 took DMT. Now, ayahuasca I thought is DMT, but I guess they took a pure form of DMT. Maybe I guess they maybe smoked actual DMT or 5-MeO DMT. But okay, so you can see that more people are doing LSD and psilocybin than ayahuasca based on the survey, just based on the people that came to the survey. So from the kind of the population of people that are inclined to pursue the survey, it looks like the common drugs are LSD and psilocybin. Ayahuasca is more rare, it seems. So participants were predominantly white and mostly from the U.S. Okay, big self-selection bias here. Not surprising. So on this channel, I'm going to be frank and open with you. I'm never going to lie to you. I'm never going to hide or BS. So white people, mostly whites. Where are the blacks? Where are the Latinos? Where are the Asians? So from just a purely scientific perspective, I'm going to want a very broad and diverse group of people taking these drugs to see the effects, right? In every way diverse, in every possible way, because these drugs are that intense. They're that crazy. And you would want to see how people from diverse backgrounds, diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, diverse childhoods, diverse relationships, diverse mental approaches, diverse assumptions, how all those people are impacted by psychedelics. You're going to want to do that. You're going to want to take that feedback I'm talking about humans. Humans, we as a society are going to want to take that feedback, take that knowledge, really capture that knowledge, and use that to build our kind of approaches and understandings and considerations and processes as we move forward, as we create psychedelic therapies, right? Moving forward. Probably the year 2100, right? 2100. What kind of world are we going to be? Are we going to have SSRIs? Or are we going to be doing psychedelic therapies for self improvement? If we are, if we are going to be in that world where we're just an elevated society of better people, we're going to want to be able to administer and kind of approach these drugs in a healthy way as a society. So we need that feedback. Right now, it's only people that are self-selecting, that are more adventurous, that are more brave, that are more open-minded, that are meditators, that are more physically fit, that are more mentally healthy. It's only those people that are going after psychedelics now and actually taking these surveys. Um, so, you know, that it's good. It's good that we're doing these FDA trials, and I'm excited to learn more about how diverse sets of people you know react to it. I'm sure. I bet you. I'm sure it's going to be great. I'm sure for all people most of the time, unless you're kind of course, this is not medical advice, but unless you're kind of on the spectrum more towards the psychotic, more towards the type of person that's predisposed to having a psychotic breakdown, then yeah, you shouldn't be taking psychedelics. That's scary. But so let's keep going with this. So we're saying 85% white. That's a self-selection. This doesn't surprise me. White people are much more inclined to go online and do a survey. A black person, a Latino person, I bet you they're going to be more predisposed to thinking, hey, they're going to think for a sec, wait, do I really want to go online and basically click and say I did psychedelics? It's an illegal drug. Do I really want to do that? That's you know. So you're going after the more confident, the more calm people, the people that were abused by society, the people that were hurt by society, even the white people that were hurt by society. But I'm just saying, black people are more likely to be abused and hurt by society today, and to feel a little bit frightened, right? To feel a little bit more frightened, those people are less likely to do the survey. But that's a completely side topic. That's a side topic for this. Um, and mostly in the United States, of course. Compared with the drug, so compared with a non-drug group, so mostly whites in the U.S. We're doing the survey, so it's a very white-based piece of knowledge we're gaining, right? Which is not surprising. Also with marijuana, look what happened with marijuana. Well, it tears my heart apart to even think about it. It makes me just tears my heart apart, honestly. I don't want to even cry when I say it, but look what happened with marijuana. So unfair. There's so many black people in jail for smoking marijuana, for fucking having marijuana, while there's so many white people that are just smoking. That it's so unfair. Basically, you have thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of black people that are in jail just because of marijuana, and then we decided to legalize it, and all the whites are smoking it, and it's no big deal. So when white people do a drug, it's okay. If it's a black only drug, it's not okay. If it's a black only drug, you're going to jail, buddy. But once the whites decide to do it, once the whites say, okay, we're into this drug too now. Okay, let's legalize it. Everyone's okay. That's how it works. That's how it works in America. I don't want to sound like crazy lib here or somebody that's I don't want to get into politics here. And I don't know. I'm going on quite a bit of a tangent here, but I feel uh, this is a strong opinion of mine that it's not fair what happened with marijuana. It's dark. It's just very dark. And being into this space, the psychedelic space, and having read quite a bit about the approach towards marijuana, both from a business perspective, both how the marijuana industry kind of failed, right, kind of fucked up in terms of once it got legalized, marijuana businesses were not able to do that well so far. Maybe in the future they will, but they were not able to give great returns to their investors and shareholders. Unfortunately, that's one aspect I've read on, and the other is the social aspect, the kind of the last 100 years of marijuana use in the U.S. from reefer madness, literally 100, almost 100 years ago, reefer madness, that kind of crappy propaganda to making marijuana illegal across the country, basically, and just saying only alcohol is okay. Racist, twisted, perverted people far away that don't know anything, they were deciding for us what kind of substances we could put in our body. And a lot of these kind of drug policies and the war on drugs was deeply, deeply racist. And so you had that impact uh, even people in the 90s, blacks in the 80s and 90s, even in the early 2000s. Very unfair. So uh, we have to keep all that in mind. We have to keep all that in mind. That everything matters and everything needs to be kept in mind, especially when we're talking about psychedelic medicines, especially when we're talking about something so transformative. It's not a coffee shop that we're investing in if we're investing in psychedelic firms. These are not, these are not books or podcasts or movies. This is this is a way to meet God, right? It's the most sacred thing there is. It's the most important thing there is. Very little is more important than this. And so everything matters and everything needs to be considered. Let's keep going here. So compared with the non-drug group, there were more men in the psychedelic group, 78. So in the psychedelic group, there were 78% men and 32 in the non-drug group. That's interesting. These results, I don't know. And they tended to be younger, 32 versus 55 at the time of experience. So, I mean, we already know this. Anyone who's done psychedelics knows that you're going to be calmer about death right after. Anyone. I mean, unless you take a microdose, maybe you would, but with a microdose. But I'm thinking, more so with a larger dose. Even the coffee I drink Four Sigmatic Lion's Mane mushroom coffee. Even that improves my mood. Even that helps me. So it's not rocket science here. We have quite a bit of non-scientific anecdotal evidence already. I'd say thousands of years worth, actually. Yeah. So similarities between the two groups are talking about yeah. So about 90% of participants in both groups reported a decrease in fear of death when considering changes in their views. Most participants in both groups, non-drug group 85%, drug group 75, rated the experience to be among the top five most personally meaningful and spiritually significant in their lives. Their psychedelic experience, that is. Participants in both groups reported moderate, strong, persisting positive changes in personal well-being and life purpose and meaning. Wow. So those are the similarities. Now let's see the differences. This is quite interesting to me. Let's see the differences here. So the non-drug group was more likely to report that their life was in danger, being medically unconscious, or being clinically dead. So basically, when you're comparing people with like you have a guy who did psychedelics and a guy who had a near-death experience, and then you compare. Well, say you don't have one guy. Say you have 100 guys who had near-death experiences and 100 guys who had psychedelic trips, and then you survey them. Well, what they're saying here with the survey, after not 100 but 3,000 total, they're saying the results they were able to tease out was that if you chose the near-death experience route, not the psychedelic route, and chose, I'm obviously I'm being funny, facetious. Um, if you chose a near-death experience, your near-death experience, you choose that, you're more likely to be medically unconscious during that experience. You're more likely to think your life's in danger, or you're more likely, uh, to think that you're clinically dead, um, or maybe you're more likely to be clinically dead. Apparently, I guess. And if you're in the psychedelic group, you're less likely to actually be unconscious. You're less likely to be to think your life is in danger. Although you could potentially think your life's in danger if you start having a bad trip, very possible. And it seems like, I mean, you're less likely to be either think you're clinically dead, or I guess to actually be clinically dead. That's wild. The non-drug group was more likely to report that there's what's the difference between dead and clinically dead. Also, I'm into wild. The non-drug group was more likely to report that their experience was very brief, lasting 5 minutes or less. That makes sense, given psychedelics last a while. Like, psilocybin lasts up to 12 hours, 12 hours tripping. And, I mean, psilocybin could be 4 hours. LSD could be like 12 hours. Psilocybin, it's a 4 hour trip. So It's not a joke. I think DMT is much faster. So basically, yeah, that's the study. Pretty cool. And just another tiny block on the big, enormous wall that's building called the psychedelics wall. The wall that's going to change mental health in the U.S. potentially. There obviously are a lot of risks, and it could all go to shit, completely to shit. FDA could fail to approve even a single one. Congress could completely frustrate all these new startups' efforts. And, our entire country could go back to thinking the way we did in the 60s, 70s, 80s, late 60s, I guess, more 70s and 80s. And, it could be dead for a generation or two. The idea that psychedelic medicines and therapies would be prominently or widely available in the US and North America. But even though that could happen, that may not necessarily happen. There's a lot of hardworking, smart people working towards making this a reality and completely and utterly, unequivocally revolutionizing mental health in the U.S. So